Okay, we're going to begin the service for Mrs. Rukin. I'm going to ask anyone who has a cell phone or any other noise-making device to please turn your phone to the off position. Officiating our service today will be Rabbi Paul Cohen of Temple Jeremiah.
Friends, as we are about to begin this tribute of love to the life of Marion Rukin, there is a ritual that we perform first. The ritual is called Kriya, which literally means a tearing. It's a ritual that actually comes to us from biblical times when our ancestors heard of the loss of a loved one. They would tear the article of clothing that they were wearing. It was a sign of grief and sadness, to be sure, but also a sign of confusion and sometimes even the anger that we feel when someone that we love is taken from our midst. The Kriya ribbon, which we use today, also serves as an outward sign to those that we'll meet in the coming days that indeed there has been a tear in the fabric of our lives. So without having to say a word, people will see the ribbon and will know how to respond accordingly. And at a time when perhaps it is most difficult to offer words of blessing, our tradition gives us words to say. And so Barbara, Gary, if you'll come stand with me. You'll repeat the words after me, first in the Hebrew and then in English. Baruch atah,
Baruch atah
Adonai
Adonai Eloheinu
melech haolam,
melech haolam
dayan emet.
dayan hamet.
Blessed are you, God,
Blessed are you, God,
ruler of the universe,
ruler of the universe,
the judge of truth.
the judge of truth.
I had the great privilege of knowing Marion in life. And as I was talking to her family, there were just so many wonderful points of connection that I actually wasn't aware of in our lives. So Sen High School and Evanston and the Harwich JCC and Niles Township congregation, and just so many wonderful points of connection. And her love of children, her love of people, her selflessness, her generosity came through in so many ways. And I didn't share this with you, and I don't know if you remember this. I think it was when I first met Mel and Marion. It was at their apartment on the Old Willow, right? Yeah, the condo there, right? Yeah, and we were sitting there, and I was thinking about, she's just a lovely, gracious woman, and the only thing that got her upset was that there was a person that she worked with, or was in the building, and after years and years and years, she felt still didn't know her name. Right, and so it was just not the person who couldn't take the time, or that wasn't seemed to rise to that level of importance. And it wasn't that she was personally hurt, but that that's not a way to live your life. Right, you live your life in relationship to people, and that so it's no surprise that she was always surrounded by a large circle of friends. Mel, as I understand, not so much, but they made a great team together, And as I was thinking about what I knew of Marion and what was continued to be shared with me, and Gary, you had mentioned just before we started that one thing that was left out was her brother, who had passed away at a very young age. He was 14, and Marion was 9, and just the impact that would have on a young woman, a young girl, and it just kind of reinforced how important people are, and you can't take that for granted. That you can't always assume that people are always going to be there, and so treat them well in the moment. was something that I believe that she continued to live her life as, because you don't know. You just don't know. And not that she was a pessimist by any stretch of, and looking for the next shoe to drop. She wasn't that kind of person. Quite the opposite. And I think it was because that's how she chose to find meaning in that terrible, terrible experience of losing her older brother at such a young age. And as these thoughts were coming through my mind, and especially right now in this moment, I have a poem that I wanted to share, that I've shared at other funeral services, where it seems so appropriate and speaks to Marion's character, and if she were speaking to us in this moment, these might be the words that she would share with us. The poem is called Epitaph, and it was written by Merritt Malloy. Some of you may be familiar with it. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known and loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live on your eyes and not on your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Death has taken our beloved Marion Rukin. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Marion's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For her companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It teaches us of our kinship with the divine. In joy as in sorrow, in light as in darkness, in life as in death. Psalm 23, the Shepherd's Psalm. Adonai rohi lo echsar, bihinot eshe yarbitzeni, al me menuchot yenahaleni. Nafshi shovev, Yancheni v'magle tzedek, Yancheni v'magle tzedek, Leman shemo, Gam ki elech b'getz al mavet lo yirara, Ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai, shulchan neged zorerai, dishanta v'shemen roshi, kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'vet Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai ro'i lo echsar. Adonai ro'i lo echsar. In the pamphlet you received here at the cemetery, you can find the English translation of the 23rd Psalm. And I invite you, if you wish, to join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There is a beautiful custom as we welcome Shabbat at the Shabbat dinner table of reciting blessings. Blessings that we recite to welcome Shabbat when we light the candles, the Kiddush, the blessing over the Sabbath wine, celebrating the joy of Shabbat, and the Motzi, the blessing over the challah, the special loaf of bread baked in honor of Shabbat and really carrying through to the meal itself. And there are also opportunities for people to bless one another at the Shabbat table. Parents blessing their children, husbands and wives blessing each other. And the blessing that is offered by a husband for his wife, the words that are suggested are from the Bible, from the book of Proverbs, from chapter 31. And this particular section is known more popularly as a Woman of Valor. And I think again speaks to Marion and her character. A woman of valor who can find. She is more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She does him good, never harm all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding. Her candle burns on into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband sings her praises. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excel them all. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given and God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. With Job we say, Adonai natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one, Marion Rukin, who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and your love, as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach, blessed be the name of God, now and forever. Amen. I invite you to take these next few moments to call forward the cherished memories that you have of Marion's life and how her love touched each of our hearts in this moment of silent reflection. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, be acceptable in your sight. God, our rock and our Redeemer. God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Our tradition teaches us that words that come from the heart go straight to the heart. And so as we continue this tribute of love to Marion's life, we do so with the words of her family. We'll hear first from George, her nephew, but kind of like a younger brother in many ways. And we're going to hear from her grandchildren, from Rachel and Sam and Zach, from her children, Barbara and Gary, and her son-in-law, Ron.
Obviously, age before beauty. I thought a lot about what I could say this morning, since Marion's been part of my life for all my many years, except the last 2 days. But I thought I would tell the assembled group here, what I think is at the core of much of the way Marion treated all of us. Rather than tell you how much I miss her already. Marion was born in Brooklyn, New York, to Jacob and Ray Greenberg, who lie right over there, and with her older sister, Ruth, lived together in Brooklyn. When Ruth got married, she and her husband, right there, moved in directly across the hall. So when I was born a few years later, we were the exact opposite of what's called a nuclear family. There were 6 of us, 3 on each side of the hall. Marion, at about 12, with her parents, and baby me with my parents, which of course one was her sister, lived across the hall from one another. And I don't think, though I don't remember terribly well, that the doors were ever really closed. We were just one big family in a tenement in Brooklyn. And Marion played multiple roles. She was my aunt officially, and as the rabbi just said, a sort of a surrogate sister to me, my older sister. She was obviously stuck with being my babysitter too. And she was my mother's sister and a daughter, of course, to her parents, and we all lived together. And I'm focusing on this because more than the usual number of family roles and living close by each other, it's one of the keys, I think, to understanding Marion's continuing life and later life. We all, together, moved to Chicago in the last half of the 1940s. Marion's father worked for a company that had a dressmaking factory near North and Western Avenues, which my daughter is about to move next door to, and says the building is still there. Smoller Brothers. I'm not sure what. Smoller Brothers Dressmaking. And the extended family bought a frame house in West Rogers Park near Richmond and Devon, if you know where that is, where it was relatively inexpensive. In fact, I had to walk through muddy fields to get to school. And the 2 families could live together as one and afford it because they were together. Once again, Marion was close by her family. All 6 of us lived in the same house, which enabled her and others to continue to play their multiple roles as family members. Again, Marion was my aunt, but more importantly, she was my babysitter sister until she married Mel. He was in the Marines, and I was excited to visit them in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, godforsaken place, where Marion taught at the base school while Mel trained, I'm not sure for what. Marion was happiest around these children. She engaged them, challenged them, and gave them the emotional support they needed, since many of their parents were off somewhere serving the United States. And I'm sure they gave much back to her. And of course, if you think about it, it was a precursor to the work she would do in Chicago and Skokie when she returned. When Mel finished his service, they moved to Evanston in an apartment directly across the street, kitty corner, from Dyke Stadium, or what was Dyke Stadium. I remember being a kid and the whole family went over and painted the place before they came back. And then after a few years there, maybe just a year or two, I don't remember, they moved back to Chicago. Where do you think they moved? Yes, they directly across the street from the house where her parents and we lived, where she was brought up. I mean, we could see their windows. They could see her old house. Once again, at this minimal physical distance, everyone in the large family could play their familiar roles again. Marion was mother, daughter, sister, babysitter, aunt, all mixed together in some wonderful sort of stew. Years later, time there was up. Both families moved to the very north end of Chicago near Howard and Sacramento, or between Sacramento. And where did they move? 2 blocks from one another. So I'll leave you thinking about the impact of this very close, physically close family, impact that on Marion that we all know and love and miss.
We just need our own copy.
None of us are printed. We wanted to start by thanking everyone for coming out today to honor our grandmother. Obviously, times are a little strange and this isn't the normal service we would have expected. Nonetheless, we appreciate everyone's support during this difficult time.
Gammy was so important to all 3 of us, and we were all so lucky to have had her in our lives for as long as we did. Though we are all saddened by her passing, we are all better off for the time we spent with her and comforted by knowing that she lived an incredible, meaningful, loving, and long life.
It would be difficult to speak of Gammy without remembering and talking about our amazing Bop. So many of our memories consisted of them being together. Their love for each other and for our whole family was always evident, and they set the bar very high for how to treat people that you love. I hope everyone is lucky enough to experience half the love and joy from marriage that they did.
We spent so much time with Gammy and Bob when we were growing up, and they both had a significant impact on all of our upbringings. 2 different things that immediately come to mind when looking back on our time with Gammy and Bob were our trips to Door County, Wisconsin, and each of our trips for our bar and our bat mitzvahs. Our trips to Door County were so special and were defined in part by the traditions that we maintained year after year. Those memories will surely last a lifetime and include Gammy tuna and Gammy cheese and many other food memories that we shared.
Every year we would play a overly competitive game of bocce ball. Gammy and I were always partners. Our trips to Door County also included hanging out at the beach, at the house we rented.
and also going for long bike rides, though Gammy chose not to ride and instead would stay at the house and usually prepare quite the feast of a lunch for all of us. And also, she and I would often walk down to the water and feed the ducks, which is kind of strange.
Our immediate family has returned to Door County in the last few years, and it just continues to be so special for us because of all the memories that we created in the 25 plus years that we went with them when we were younger. Gammy and Bop were always incredibly generous. This was particularly apparent in our bar and bat mitzvah trips. With seemingly no restrictions, they allowed us each to choose a trip that we wanted to go on, just us and them, at the time of our bar and bat mitzvahs.
For each of us, these trips were amazing for multiple reasons. And not only do we each get to go on vacation that we got to choose, which isn't something that most 13-year-olds are able to do, but we also were very fortunate to spend a good amount of time with Gammy and Bob. For myself, I was able to go on a couple baseball stadiums and throughout the Midwest and the East Coast.
I was able to go to California and spend time in 4 different cities across the state and saw baseball games and stadiums in each of those cities.
And I went with Gammy and Bop to London. We saw shows and ate fish and chips and explored the city. When we were younger than that, Gammy and Bop used to have special days with each of us. So I would say every couple months they would take each of us and we'd have a fun day around the area. We would go to the Kohl's Museum. Apparently I thought we all went to the Kohl's Museum. The boys apparently went to baseball things or restaurants, and it was just so nice to have that one-on-one time.
Gammy loved to cook and to host her family for a number of different holidays. Due to her loving and caring nature, she always made a note of what everyone's favorite foods were and always made an effort to make those when we were over. Before each of the 3 of us went away to college, Gammy and Bob hosted our whole family over for a big homemade dinner with a menu consisting entirely of items chosen by the person who was going away. That was obviously, a testament to her, her caring nature and her generosity, and how she wanted to make sure that before we went away to college and, ate dining hall food, we had, one more special home-cooked meal filled with, such a variety of foods that were whatever we wanted them to be.
Piggyback on that, they also didn't have to go together.
Right.
So for mine, I had skirt steak, rice noodle casserole, and pickled tomatoes from Superdog. Gammy and Bop lived such amazing lives pursuing the things that they loved while surrounding themselves with family and friends. They talked about how they grew up with so little, yet were able to become so successful. Gammy used to joke that her parents were so poor when she was born that she couldn't afford a middle name. And that's why she didn't have one. I felt really bad about this. So I gave her the middle name Ice Cream. So I always called her Gammy Ice Cream Rukin. She had so much pride in being our grandma, never missing a baseball game, dance recital, or graduation. The only thing I saw her take more pride in was being Sadie's great grandma. Sorry. After Sadie was born, we bought Gammy one of those digital photo frames, so we could remotely upload photos, which we didn't know at the time, but with COVID was super helpful. My mom would send her pictures and she would sit in her apartment and watch the slideshow of Sadie photos. My mom actually had to threaten to take it away because she was missing activities just to sit and watch the photos. Gammy was such an amazing mother, wife,
Mother-in-law, aunt, and friend. And to us, she was the best, Gammy. We love you and we'll miss you.
So I wanted to share some thoughts on a truly great mother-in-law. You know, it's funny, often when people mention their mother-in-law, it's with a sigh of frustration or sarcasm. I assure you this was not the case whenever I mentioned my mother-in-law. She was an exceptional woman. And I Googled the poem, A Woman of Valor, and I got the Cliff Note version of it. So I won't repeat all the things that Rabbi shared, but I wanted to give you a slightly amended, personalized version of this poem. A woman of valor. Valor is a word that describes Marion Rukin. A woman of valor changes the world and the people around her. Her strength guides us through the days. She is defined by her actions, things that light up the world. Her valor was something special. She stood up to many challenges throughout her 90 years, as that period of time will likely bring people. Valor is not defined by age, and it impacts oh so many people. It is held up by the deeds one does, deeds of the heart. Marion had a divine nature to her. A woman of valor makes the world change. It is interesting that we just celebrated Purim. Marion was as courageous as Esther, whose faith and bravery were pleasing to God. Now a few quick Gammy stories. I thought my kids might share this, but I appreciate that I can. Many years ago in a conversation with my daughter Rachel, Rachel said, "Gammy can't swim." Gammy thought Rachel said, "Gammy can't swear." So Gammy's response was to drop an F-bomb. Now, this is a woman in her late 60s, early 70s at the time. Now, not what you'd exactly expect from a grandmother. I've heard people in life say that they're not always blessed with wonderful parents. I was doubly blessed, as I had two sets of incredible parents. Gammy spent many years teaching Jewish nursery schools. She loved it and loved all her students. And for years afterwards, we'd run into people at Old Orchard or at a restaurant and say, "Weren't you my nursery school teacher?" Or the parents would say how special she was to their children. She did have a weakness, her voice. While she was blessed with many other talents, let's say singing was not one of them, although she loved music and all types of music. She would often threaten to sing. Most of the time, thankfully, she did not. While I'm sure that she was a great mother, I can only imagine that Gary and Barbara were not always the easiest of children. Her true strength, as my kids pointed out, came out as a grandmother. What she did and felt for my three children was unbelievable. The kids have shared with you their special one-on-one days, their post-bar bat mitzvah trips, dance recitals, and also many baseball games. Gammy was always there. She simply could not get enough of her grandchildren. Rachel said the other day, now I know where you and Dad, Mom get it. In so many ways, she set the bar very high. My hope as a grandparent is to get close to her level. I'm trying. Last story. For many years, Saturday afternoons were lunch at Marion's. On most Saturdays, Mel was also invited. This was a gathering of many people, people that loved each other and certainly loved Marion and often Mel. This was never a burden for Marion or for those of us lucky to attend. At the end of the day, this is who Gammy was and what she did. She brought people together and showered them with love. Her life was certainly as a blessing to all that had the privilege of knowing her. She will be missed by many people and the lives that she touched. Thank you so much for everything. Love you, Gammy.
I just want to point out that the kids read their speech from the little phone, and Barbara and I used large type.
True.
So, my mom was a very frugal woman. She made a salad for the state of Illinois, and there were half a tomato wedge and a cucumber slice left over. She carefully wrapped them up and saved them. She didn't like to waste anything. She grew up poor, the daughter of immigrants during the Depression. And as Ron said, she was too poor to afford a middle name. In the past, she and my dad would spend winters in Arizona. So one year she made dinner for the family to empty the table so there wouldn't be any food left to spoil, empty the kitchen. She made this incredibly enormous, delicious meal with everything. I think there were 10 dishes. My mom was a great cook. She loved cooking for her family, sharing what she had for us. And with the assigned duty of finishing all the food on the table, which seemed impossible, we all ate really heartily, though I believe Ron and I took this mission the most earnestly. I know I stuffed myself beyond reason, and in the end, we finished every bit of food. For years afterward, my mom fretted that she had run out of food and believed she didn't make enough. So I don't know about Ron, but I don't think I could eat again for a day or two. We told her this over and over, but she still lamented it was her fault and she had run out of food. My mom was a frugal woman. She was frugal because she never wanted to run out of anything we might want or need. Everything she was and everything she did was for someone else. She wanted her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nieces, nephews, cousins, and friends to have anything they might need or want. Thank you, Mom, for your love, your food, everything you taught us, so many kindnesses. You can stop worrying now. We'll be okay. Except we miss you. I know you're with Dad and you can take care of each other. We love you. You were the best.
Hi, guys. A mother-daughter bond is unbreakable, and the pain of that loss. Is it too high up? Yes. I'm short, and I can't see. Mother-daughter bond is unbreakable, and the pain of that loss is unbearable until you realize that although the bond is broken, with memories, it never really is. I was always lucky to have the nice mom, the kind mom, always thinking of others. She rarely raised her voice, and although I'm sure I wasn't the easiest kid, she rarely yelled. She was a great friend to me and always fun to be around. I know it will sound like I'm 100, but we grew up in a simple time. Summers were going to the beach or hanging out or going to that Larry Jatowski's cabin. We took our first big vacation on an airplane when I was in 8th grade. Life was good. We were a very happy family, and I always felt loved and taken care of. I remember being a kid and not being able to fall asleep at night, which I know to my family is hard to believe since I can fall asleep standing up now. And my mom and I made up a poem to say at night to help me sleep. And we would say, "Good night, sleep tight, Mommy loves you with all her might." And I always felt loved and safe. I feel like she met her calling when she became a grandma. She insisted on not picking a name for herself, but letting the grandchildren name her. And Rachel named her Gammy. She actually initially named both her and my dad Bop, but Gammy said they needed different names. So she named her Gammy. She loved my children so much and loved spending time with them. They each had their special days, which were designed for them to do whatever they wanted. She not only loved hanging with my kids, but also their friends. I actually got a very sweet text from a friend of yours, Zach, who said, it was Dory's mom, who said she made brownies with Zach and his friend, who she never pronounced his name right. She would go to visit my kids at college and take their friends out and stay overnight and take them out for brunch in the morning. She loved interacting with my kids and their friends. I think part of her ability to love my brother and I, as well as her children and grandchildren, we are her children, her grandchildren and great-grandchildren so much, was her love for my dad. They truly had a life filled with so much love. They led by example. You did not leave each other without kissing each other goodbye, and you did not walk into a room seeing each other again. And I'm not talking for, months gone by, at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, and you welcomed each other with a kiss. The past few days, I found myself having a hard time separating my old mom from my recent mom. I found myself often saying, if you knew my mom before, if you knew my mom when. And although she changed, I realized that she was still the kind, sweet person who really cared about others that I had always known. I have gotten several phone calls from people at Sedgebrook's and Sunday telling me how much they liked my mom, how she always asked how they were doing and truly never once complained about anything. If you asked her how she felt, even last week, her answer was, I feel great. I also realized that although she had greater needs since her stroke in 2010, it allowed me the opportunity to spend more time with her. I would go to their condo and cook meals and package them for the freezer, but she would sit at the table and talk and keep me company. I know it was difficult for her to ask for help, but she was always so appreciative for all that anyone did for her. As she deteriorated more the past year, she was still very kind and appreciative. And it meant more to her to be with family than anything. And I know I'll make you lose that, Sam, but right before my dad died, one of the most important things was to go to Sam's restaurant and have dinner. And they were so proud of him. They were proud of all of my kids. My mom will be missed, but not forgotten, and my wish is that everyone takes the kindness and love that she always shared and live your life with just a little more kindness. Love you, Mom. Miss you already. Say hi to Dad.
Words from the heart indeed go straight to the heart. There isn't much that I can add to this beautiful tribute. The piece that I would like to add, I had asked, did Marion have a Hebrew name? And Barbara, you immediately said, well, I'm going to go with Miriam. And I thought, even if that wasn't her Hebrew name, given that it is perfect for her. And I say this because of Miriam of the Bible, right? Moses and Aaron's sister, their older sister, right? Who was so loving and caring for her siblings, right? And looked after them, looked after Moses after he was set down the Nile, and that she was also a teacher. Right? When the children of Israel safely get to the other side of the Sea of Reeds, Moses, we're told, led the children of Israel, the men really, in song. And then Miriam took up her timbrel and she began to sing and dance. Now, I don't really think Marion had such a bad voice, right? And maybe it wasn't her best quality, and she had many wonderful qualities, but singing was a part of how she expressed herself too. and that so this image of Miriam singing and dancing, and of Marion singing through life and teaching, and really taking care of people, her family, her students. If it wasn't her given Hebrew name, it's a very good Hebrew name and very, very descriptive of her. When she came here, and I'm not sure why, and George, maybe you can help, why she was so intent on getting rid of her New York accent when she came to Chicago. And she was relatively successful in doing this. I would not have guessed that she was from New York, having met her later in life. But there was at least one phrase that she couldn't give up. She would be standing on line, not standing in line, and that's something that stayed with her. She graduated from Senn High School and attended the University of Illinois at Navy Pier. She made friends easily, many college friends that became lifelong friends. Again, not a surprise. She continued to make friends throughout her life. There was a friend group that was an acronym of all the last names, the Kokushla Gurus. There was a dinner club and a mahjong club that was all a part of that group. This was again of Marion's doing, not so much Mel's doing. He was along for the ride. But he is a smart guy. I mean, he knew that, Marion was the right fit. And for, 66 years, more than 66 years, that was absolutely true. They met through a boy that actually Marion was seeing, who thought that she and Mel would be really the good match, and how right he was in that. And they were married only after Mel was assured of a stateside military posting. He did not want to leave a wife going overseas and not returning, right? And I remember this story. And speaking of his care and his concern and really the sensitivity of what this could mean. And back in Chicago, we talked about that she taught at the Horwich JCC and the preschool program, then Niles Township. And then she continued to take on subbing assignments, teaching assignments. She loved teaching so much. Into her late 70s, she was still accepting these assignments with the caveat that she didn't want to get that early morning call, like a 4 or 5 in the morning call to come in and teach that day. She said it would take the long-term assignments. But she loved it. And her love of teaching, it really isn't surprising to me that her students would be able to come up to her years later, and their parents, and remember her, because this love of teaching came through to them even at that very young age, very perceptive. You've heard about her relationship to her children, relationship to the grandchildren, and how blessed she was to, and I think, Barbara, you shared with me, hanging on to make sure that Rachel was going to be okay, that Brooklyn would come safely into the world, and to know that she was a great grandmother for the second time. What a blessing. About her love of music. What wasn't mentioned necessarily was her meticulous nature, right? Which came in very handy. She kept a food diary for years and years and years, right? Just so careful about her weight, which she never had as a problem. But there was she was a bookkeeper for the household and for Mel and Gary's business as well. She would clean dishes before they went into the dishwasher, and of course she would clean the house before the cleaning people came to clean the house. And I just, again, with the story of Miriam, I thought, one of the things that was pointed out, and there were so many things to point out of what she did and what she loved, Seder was a big event. And she put together a songbook, and she had the Haggadah with the markings of when the song was to be inserted, and everybody sang. And but she made it fun. It wasn't just going through the motions and getting through the Haggadah, when do we eat, when do we eat, when do we eat? But again, with this story of Miriam and being so instrumental in the whole Exodus story, that perhaps she felt really as if she was reliving that story, and through the telling and through the singing, bringing it forward for her family in such a memorable way. Mel and Marion were involved in Jewish life through Marion's teaching and their membership at Temple Bethel. They enjoyed being members of the M&M Club. I guess it's the Mr. and Mrs. Club. They loved to travel. They loved to travel with the family, as you've heard, and they loved to take their own trips with the two of them. And were especially fond of the elder hostel trips, where they get a chance not only to travel, but also to learn as well. And one thing that struck me, it was great. She collected hotel keys in the days when they still had actual keys for hotels, and just as memories of the trips, but also the photographs and the photo albums. And I think the estimate was there are 40 of these albums or so, and each one with a caption under the photo to remember to capture that memory that was so important to her. Marion sang and danced throughout life and brought so much love and so much joy to everyone who was privileged to be touched by her life. May the memory of Marion Rukin, devoted daughter, sister, devoted aunt/sister, and wife and mother and grandmother and great-grandmother and friend to so many, always be for a blessing. And let us say, Amen. I invite you to rise for the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Ametzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezohar Rakia Masirim, Et Nishmat Re'enu Shehalcha Leolama, Bal HaRachamim, Yastireha B'Seter Kenafav Leolamim, Vayitzror B'Torah Chaim Et Nishmata, Adonai Unachalata, V'tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava, V'nomar, Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Marion Rukin, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and together we say, Amen. The dust returns to the earth as it was. The Spirit returns to God who gave it. It is only the house of the Spirit which we now lay within the earth, for the Spirit itself cannot die. Receive in mercy, O God, the soul of our departed Marion. Grant her that everlasting peace which you have prepared for us in the world to come. Though no human eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor mind has grasped it, still it is our sure inheritance and our everlasting portion. O God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which loss inflicts is the measure of a love that is stronger than death. That we cry in the anguish of our hearts, may we be like children who know that their parent is near and who cling unafraid to the trusted hand. In this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us to your keeping, as we repeat words hallowed by the generations, the words of the Kaddish Prayer, which you can find on the back cover of your pamphlets. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam omei olmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata na'amiran bi'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael Imru Amen. May God grant peace to all who mourn the passing of Marion Rukin, and bring comfort to all who are bereaved among us. And together we say, Amen. At the end of the day, we gently tuck our children in for the night. At the end of a person's life, the last act of Gemilut Chasadim, the last act of loving kindness that we can do for her, is to cover her grave. In a moment, once the workers here lower the casket within the grave, there'll be an opportunity for all who wish to place shovelfuls of earth within the grave. The custom is to place 3 shovelfuls into the grave and then to replace the shovel so that each person can fulfill the mitzvah with fullness of intention. We have gloves that can be used to make sure that everyone is safe and protected in participating in this mitzvah.
Jan dealt with him.
Second glove. They're shoving down. We're near to the later. We do it this way.
Did you see this abandoned
Speakers.
Anybody wants to use the small pails, that's the mitzvah is the same.
Shovels available if anybody would like.
Anybody else wants to come forward? Anybody else wants to come forward?
Dad, Bob, were you gonna do it? Yeah. They have the shovel, the little one.
Yeah.
It's cute too.
They had to wake her up.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
They're coming over. They had to wake her up at 3 to
Yeah, and I'm a Barbara. Hey, there's a card for her. Yeah. That's not it. Looks like the water.
I think it is in there.
Where I would have run. Our neighborhood. Yeah. That's where he was. Your dad. Was he born here?
Yep, in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And I was born here. Why did I know that?
I love both.
That's it. Today's no time.
Oh, goody.
More bagels. I remember going
Walking.